Hi guys, today I'm going to be reading you a story called Marcy and the Riddle of the Sphinx. I hope you enjoy it. Got a lovely first page here and it's got a star map and it's got the Egyptian world there, and there's a character here, or a god, called Ra. This is Ra's sunboat in this picture here. You've also got Anubis, Bast, Ra and Isis. And these are all Egyptian gods and goddesses that you'll meet during the story. Again, we've got our title page and we've got some clues about the character at the beginning there. We've got this hat, this explorer's hat, and you've got this feather. Now this feather comes in very handy for Marcy, which you'll find out all about. That eye as well, that eye's something to keep in mind whilst we read this.
Hello, dear reader, and welcome to the Brownstone Family Observatory. Here we can survey a night sky, a thing which can be very scary and mysterious to some. One person who had this fear more than most was one of my ancestors, a girl by the name of Marcy Brownstone. Travelling the world, her father was a great explorer who saved his village from a terrible beast when he was a young boy. He discovered ancient secrets and collected wondrous artefacts, until one day he met another adventurer, and together they moved to a small town and Marcy was born soon after. Every evening, Marcy loved to listen to the tales of her father's adventures. She never quite believed him. After all, he was old and far too portly to do such things. But at night, everything changed. The creatures from her father's amazing tales turned into terrifying monsters and shadows. Marcy felt utterly lost and alone in the dark. All she could do was close her eyes tight and wait for sunrise. She's very scared here, look. One day, Arthur decided it was time for Marcy's first adventure. He knew that Marcy doubted his stories, so he took her deep into the forest to find an old friend. And as the day wore on, Marcy started to worry that they wouldn't get back before dark. Arthur pointed up to the sky and told her that the North Star would always guide them home, no matter how dark it was. Finally, they reached the entrance of a cave, and Marcy froze in fear. Evil-looking shadows climbed the walls, and she refused to go any further. Hurt that Marcy didn't trust him, and hoping she might follow him, Arthur ventured into the cave alone. Arthur had wanted to show Marcy the most incredible sight, but she didn't appear, and Arthur had to turn back. On the walk home, Arthur was quiet, and Marcy was sure he was disappointed in her. If she couldn't go in a stupid dark cave, then maybe she wasn't an adventurer at all. Maybe she wasn't even a real brownstone. The next day, Marcy found a note from her father. It said nothing was to worry about, but Marcy didn't feel happy at all. Dear Marcy, gone away on urgent business. We'll be back soon. Love, Dad. A whole week went by and Marcy was so worried that she snuck into her father's study. Hidden under piles of paper and old artefacts, Marcy found Arthur's journal. A journal's a bit like a diary, like we wrote last half term. It showed that her father must have gone to Egypt to find an old book trapped in the belly of the Sphinx. Oh no, her father had trouble just bending over when he dropped his glasses. Marcy would have to help him, somehow. Just then, she noticed a magical feather of the wind weaver tucked into the brim of her father's old hat. Arthur had told her that carrying the feather from a mighty bird would grant some help in a time of need, so Marcy smiled and put it on. Feeling a little braver already, Marcy climbed out of her study window where the wind weaver was waiting for her. Look how big it is, it's massive. She felt her chest tighten as they swooped into the air and began the long journey towards Egypt and the Sphinx. So here's a map. We are around here on the south of England, and Marcy has to travel all the way across Europe into Africa to Egypt. But something's happened. You can see the Sphinx in the distance here, but she's dropped something. Oh no, she's falling. Marcy landed at the feet of a strange creature sitting on a massive throne. I am Thor, god of knowledge, and the moon. I know who you are, little girl. Your father was foolish enough to enter the Sphinx in hope of getting my book. It seems he wanted to help you with your fear of the dark. You see, whoever possesses my book will understand all the mysteries of the world. If you look down here, you can see how small Marcy is compared to Thor. Or Thoth, as some people pronounce it. But like many before him, he underestimated its dangers. Only if you can solve the Sphinx's riddle, enter the tomb, overcome my traps and defeat the snake, can you free your father. And if you look here, you've got a bit of a map. In the mouth of the Sphinx, down the staircase, past some monsters. Poor Arthur Brownstone is at the very bottom there, surrounded by some sort of snake. This bit. Marcy was far too scared to enter the dark tomb and begged Thor to release her father. Perhaps there is something you could do for me. The sun god Ra has two magical eyes. One holds the power of the moon and the other the sun. You can see those here. The power of the moon and the power of the sun. Bring me his moon eye and I will free your father. Follow the horizon till you see a light shining through the stars. It will be Ra sailing in his sunboat. And don't come back until you have his moon eye. Poor Marcy down there. I mean, I'd be very scared myself looking at a monster as big as that. Let's see what the next page says. With Thor's words ringing in her ears, Marcy wandered through the desert towards the horizon, and suddenly she saw what looked like a shooting star. It was getting bigger. Marcy had to act quickly. So she ran and jumped and bounced and leapt and grabbed and jumped and climbed and leapt and tried her best to grab onto that anchor. At the ship's helm, Marcy could see the god Ra. He's just here. But first she would have to remain unnoticed by the boat's crew of other gods. We had Anubis, the god of the afterlife, Isis, goddess of nature and magic, and Bast, the goddess of cats. And there she is, look, she had to grab hold of that, go through the little hole in the side, climb up and creep past them all in order to try and get to Ra and have a conversation with him. With Ra in sight, Marcy came up with a plan to get his eye. She thought she could swing on a rope, kick him in the back of the head, his eye would pop out and she could grab it. But I think he may have noticed her. As she readied herself for the jump, she realised she couldn't steal somebody's eye. For all she knew, Ra could be a very nice god indeed. She bravely climbed down the rigging and walked slowly up behind him. She was very small, so she had to clear her throat as she gave a big tug on his cape. Ra was intrigued by the little human who had found her way onto his sunboat. He listened to her story before speaking. "Thank you for your honesty. Thor is always plotting to steal my moon eye. If Thor ever got hold of it, he would become unspeakably powerful and plunge the whole world into evil. As a reward for your service, I will help you free your father." "My boat will take us to the Sphinx. The goddess of the night sky, Nut, will show us the way by shining a path in the stars," said Ra. And if you look closely, you can see the outline of the goddess there, guiding them through the stars. As Ra's ship reached the Sphinx, an anchor dropped down, and just before Marcy went to climb down, Ra knelt before her. "Here, take my left eye. Its light will guide you and cut through the darkest shadows. Good luck." Marcy was filled with excitement. Maybe she was a real brownstone after all. The Sphinx loomed up ahead. As she approached it, it spoke its riddle. "I am bright when it's dark. I am dark when it's bright. I am the shepherd of the night. Who am I?" Who do you think the Sphinx is talking about? I am bright when it's dark. I am dark when it's bright. I am the shepherd of the night. Who am I? Let's find out. Marcy had never heard of a night shepherd before. What could it possibly mean? She thought and thought some more, but she couldn't think of an answer. And then she had a sudden idea. What was only at its brightest in the dark? The stars! And shepherds guide things. Of course! The North Star! The very North Star her father had told her about before. Sorry about that noise there. The Sphinx's mouth opened to reveal a set of steps. They led down into a deep, dark cave. Marcy trembled with fear, but she knew this was the only way to save her father. She used Ra's sun eye to help her. As she descended into the belly of the Sphinx, it got darker. She starts here at the beginning and goes down the staircase and round and jumps over the gap and round past huge skeletons and treasures and all sorts of things as it got darker and darker and darker. She carried on. She came out a doorway. She went past more things. There's a dagger coming out. There are gems in the floor. A giant scarab beetle. She must be brave to get over his back. Out of there, up a ladder, down here, across a lake of crocodiles, nearly getting her legs bitten off. Over the water, down a ladder, past a mummy with no head, who then chases her, through a doorway, until she reaches this. When Marcy finally found Arthur, he was too busy with a huge snake to hear her shouts. She didn't have time to think. She had to do something. Her poor dad's about to get his head bitten off. And this is where she's very brave. Clutching the eye of Ra in her hand, she vaulted straight into the snake's mouth. Vaulted means leapt, jumped. At that moment, Arthur realised the book would not help Marcy at all. She had already overcome her fear, so he dropped it and they escaped together. Outside the Sphinx, a shadowy figure was waiting for them, and an evil voice boomed. "Where do you think you're going with that eye, little girl? We had a deal. Ra's eye is mine." Marcy tried to tell Thor it was the wrong eye, but it was too late. As he took the eye, there was a flash of white light and a crack of thunder, and then silence. You won't believe what happens next. All that was left of Thor was a tiny bird and Ra's magic eye. Ra appeared and picked his eye up, placing the tiny bird on his shoulder. He will grow again and try to steal my moon eye, but for now, he's harmless. And together they climbed up onto Ra's sunboat and prepared for home. Newt guided the sunboat by shining the North Star as brightly as she could. When they were finally home, Marcy couldn't wait to tell her parents every detail about her adventure in the land of Egypt. And when it was time for Marcy to go to sleep for the first time, she didn't feel scared at all. Marcy had realised that no matter how scary the dark was, even if it was filled with monsters, she was more than brave enough to fight them. And I hope one day you too will be able to conquer your fears, no matter how big and scary or small and silly that fear is. Because by overcoming fears, you never know what wondrous things you will see. The end.